Well, hey everybody, welcome to Real Life, and this is our show where we are going to be discussing the real issues that Alice, particularly your generation, is dealing with. So, hey, I'm Franklyn Spence. I'm the founder of Forerunner Ministries, a pastor, author, conference speaker in the church, and this is my daughter, Alice.
Hello, I am Alice. I am 20 years old, just had my birthday, which is very exciting. And we've grown up here in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
So we live and are based in Switzerland. So I've grown up in an international community and have had the opportunity to get to know a lot of people, have heard a lot of different cultures and different beliefs. So today, actually, we are going to be talking about, is God boring?
Wow. Now that is an excellent topic, Alice, and I'm glad you have raised this point. Alice, tell me, what is the message that you've been getting from your friends, like at school, about this question, is God boring?
Well, it has definitely been challenging going to a non-Christian school. There is so many beliefs around you that it's really hard to tell what's true.
Yeah.
A lot of the messages I received was that the church and Christianity was just a bunch of rules.
Yeah.
That it was just a list of rules that you had to follow, and that there was no fun in it, and that it was also a lot based on attendance.
Yeah.
That a lot of times people believed that to be a Christian, you had to be going to church. You had to be going to church regularly, attending all these things, that it was this commitment that was based on time and showing up rather than on anything else.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. I totally get that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to say, like, the church that I grew up in back in Canada was it.
Yeah.
I mean, that did describe it. It was, and that was my understanding, actually, of Christianity all the way up till probably about the age of 16. And, you know, that's what I felt that it had meant. To be a good Christian meant regular Sunday attendance. And, you know, we went Sunday morning and Sunday evening and occasionally Wednesday evenings, plus Friday youth group.
Yeah.
Plus in high school, we had some sort of Christian club of some sort in high school. And for me, there was a very strong correlation between attendance and whether you're a good Christian. But I want to tell you what changed this for me, Alice. Was actually age 16.
Yeah.
I had an encounter with God.
Yeah.
And this is, for me, the fundamental thing that just changed everything for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, because suddenly I had to, how would I say this? I had to change my perception that God came out of being a historical figure from the past, and suddenly I was confronted with my goodness, I've just experienced something with God, like right now.
Yeah.
And I would say that was the first time that I started to touch on something that I would call a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And I would think up to that point, what I had was a relationship with church.
And relationship with church is tough.
Yeah.
And in media, specifically in movies, in everything you hear, church is just portrayed through this singular filter, that it is boring. You have to sit, you have to stand, you have to recite hymns. And there is churches that are like this, as you were saying.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I grew up with an environment with my dad that God was so real and he was so active.
Yeah.
And I think within media and within the world, God is past tense.
Yeah.
If they believe in him, he's past tense and he's no longer present and he's no longer active in the world and in what we're doing. And that sticks him in the past, that makes him no longer even important to what we're doing or what's happening in society.
It's that relationship component that to
revolutionizes
me,
everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a pivot point.
Yeah.
And I think without that relationship component, if you're coming into church without this a relationship that is experiential, you have personally experienced something from God.
Yeah.
I think, you know what? I think it is going to drift into this rule-based structure, some sort of organization.
And who would want to stay in that? Like, I get that.
Totally get it.
Who would want to be a part of a community where all that's important is whether you're a good person?
Yeah.
Like, there is rules within Christianity. Absolutely. Absolutely there are rules. But we were talking about this before, that it's similar to marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, good point, Alice.
That within marriage there are rules like do not cheat. And those rules are there for a reason, to protect what's important.
Yeah.
So the rules within Christianity are to protect what's important, such as if you look at the 10 Commandments, do not kill.
Yeah.
That is a big one. You can see why that rule is there, because it's protect life.
Yeah.
Life is important to God. Commitments are important to God.
Yeah.
So he put those rules in place to protect them. If you didn't have those rules, then everything would fall apart.
Yeah. And, you know, I think where this comes to a point is that in the Old Testament, there was a lot of rules.
Leviticus.
A lot of rules.
Yeah.
And in the New Testament, you know, Jesus summarizes these things, because he gets asked this question about what's the most important commandment. And he replies, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And this is the point, I think, that brings this relationship component into this whole dynamic.
Yeah.
And suddenly you get this clarity that the whole purpose is relationship.
Yeah.
And the following the rules, like, you know, in my marriage, I don't wake up in the morning thinking about, oh my goodness, I've got to follow all the rules of my marriage today.
Yes.
It's not a question, you know, it's not a factor. You're not looking at it from that point of view at all.
Yeah.
We're, you know, in the middle of living our lives together.
Yeah.
And being in love and being in a family and enjoying this and going forth. And you don't think about the rules.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with Christianity. It's you see, it's this point of relationship.
Yeah.
And when the relationship part kicks in, you don't even see the rules anymore.
They're not important.
Well, it's not that they're not important, but
True.
it's like what you see is the relationship.
Yeah. And the rules fall into that naturally.
The rules just naturally fall into that.
And I think what we're talking about is just like a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Is that actually within these rules that are there to protect us, like the fences you put around a property, like to keep things safe, there's actually freedom that's found in that. Yeah. There's freedom found in knowing what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
But we're not going into Christianity to figure that out. That's not our purpose.
Yeah.
Is to live in a society of rules. Our purpose is for relationship.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going after.
Yeah.
And I think some churches represent that beautifully, and some churches don't. And I think perhaps some of the misconceptions actually come from churches not fully grasping and understanding that Christianity is just about a relationship. That's such a simple concept, but it's not always easy.
Yeah, it's not always easy. And also, if we just back up to the point, Alice, that I think you were making earlier, there's a relationship with church and there's a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And
two very separate things.
Oh my goodness, very, very separate things. But I tell you, these blend together in my head. And of course, the issue is that the church is supposed to represent God. And it certainly does that in a very imperfect way.
Yeah.
And this reflects onto God's reputation.
Absolutely.
And the how people respect or disrespect church.
Yeah, and I understand, because if you look at the history of the church,
Yeah.
like us speaking as Canadians, we can say that like there has been recently a lot of issues brought up.
Yeah.
There has been Indigenous people, children, graves that have been found.
Yeah.
And that is awful.
Yeah.
That is awful. And what the
Absolutely.
church did in those situations is completely unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And it is like, it's a no.
Yeah.
But it's very challenging, and I understand people who are not Christians who would look at these things that the church have done and reflect it on God, because the church's job is to represent God.
Yeah.
It is to represent God.
Yeah.
But they are human, and they make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think the church does perhaps still have some repenting to do over all the mistakes that have been made.
Oh, not just some. Tons.
Yeah.
Tons of repenting. And I think, well, I guess I hope, Alice, that with today's podcast that we could start to make people aware that that the church is one organization that's full of people, for good or bad, and that's what it is. And God, though, is God.
Yeah.
And that if you can be angry at church and disgusted by that and frustrated with that, but you can still actually encounter God.
Yeah.
And build a relationship with Him. And Alice, this is the critical component that for me, I can say for sure, it's encountering Jesus as a living, alive God today.
Yeah, and if you just ask Him, an encounter with the Holy Spirit and with Jesus looks completely different for everyone else.
Completely different.
But just if you ask Jesus that you want to get to know Him in the way that He is and not in the way that He's always represented, then it will completely change how you see church and how you see Christianity, because He is a real God and He is present and He is active and He is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That relationship component changes everything.
Yeah.
Totally changes everything. With the relationship with Christ, you read through the Bible, it's a love letter to you. Without that relationship, it is a long and boring book. Church, when you go in this envelope of a relationship with God, oh my goodness, it is a very, very different experience altogether. And that, I know for me, has absolutely changed my life top to bottom.
It has.
And Alice, what would you say to someone who is going to a church that they find exceptionally boring and irrelevant to their life? What advice would you give them to do?
Honestly, that is a real toughie, because I have been in churches and been in communities where I have felt not understood, judged, and felt that what they were doing didn't truly represent God. And I think the first step is you need to forgive them. Is you need to forgive your church. Because I, for so long, have judged churches, saying that they weren't real Christians, that they didn't know God, but that's not our place to judge. And also, their relationship with God is going to look different than yours.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to look so different. So if you think that Christianity should look this one specific way, it's not going to look that way for everyone else. And that has been definitely a lesson that I've had to learn, was that I've wanted Christianity to look like this one way, saying that this way was better, but there are different people and their relationship with God is going to look different.
Yeah.
So I would say that first, forgive them.
Yeah.
Forgive them and repent if there are areas that you've judged them on, or if there's bitterness you're holding in your heart. And pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is God maybe calling you to stay and to show these people that there is a different way that you can have a relationship with God, or he can be calling you, this is our puppy Indigo, or he can be calling you perhaps to go to a different place, and either option is okay.
Yeah. You know, there's lots of very, very different styles and expressions of churches.
Definitely.
And somewhere out there, there is going to be something that fits you, feels relevant to you,
Yeah, it feels like
authentic
you belong
to you. And, you know, churches are a family. In all the bizarre and strange combinations that families exist in, you
and
know.
imperfect combinations.
Yeah, and that is a good point, actually, Alice, because there is no perfect church.
There's not.
Because churches are filled with imperfect people.
They are.
So Alice, this has been a phenomenal conversation with you, and I've really appreciated that. I hope it's been really beneficial for you, our listeners, and we are going to be continuing with this in a next authentic, real topic in our next episode. And hey, we look forward to hearing from you, our listeners. Has church been boring for you? Hey, let us know. We're interested in what your experience has been as well. Hey, God bless, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.